Hey there, gang. It is now time for my second episode of my new series that I'm calling my Clown Community Lab. For those that don't know, I started a series last week on YouTube that I'm going to be looking to do every week. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be taking a build from all of y'all, my community, and I'm going to be testing it for you guys. I'm going to be showcasing it, talking about it, giving y'all my feedback, things of that nature. And, y'all can decide for yourself both, do I want to run this build? What do I like about it, etc. And also, what should my next build be? Because in order to participate, how you do so is just by simply leaving a YouTube comment. You are to comment 4 perks that you want me to run. Don't put any add-ons. You comment 4 perks. And if your comment gets the most likes out of any others, I will then go into the replies to your comment. And the reply to your comment, which names 2 add-ons that get the most votes, I will choose those add-ons for the build. So last week, when I played a match perkless, I ended up receiving a comment with the most votes that had this build right here. We had Hex Ruin, Thrill of the Hunt, Blood Favor, and Pentimento. Now, Pentimento is going to end up getting changed in the next upcoming patch, and we'll talk about that. Also, just to mention, we did end up getting, like I said, Kerosene Can and Flask of Bleach. But to kind of go through this build, we'll look at each perk individually, and then I'll kind of talk about the playstyle. Starting first with Ruin. I'm not exactly the biggest fan of Ruin on Clown, although I do feel like it has its advantages. But speaking first with disadvantages, Ruin is a macro, it benefits macro killers more than micro killers, right? Killers like Clown that go all in on micro and don't have anything in the way of mobility, it's kind of hard for you to get value out of Ruin since survivors can choose to ignore you. We talked about how Clown is countered by pre-running, but if you're not snowballing your chases, if your chases are taking a bit extra time, survivors are sitting on that generator. Ruin is not getting you any value. And to kind of rephrase and put into perspective what I mean when it comes to how detrimental this can be when you're falling behind, Ruin is essentially as worthless as corrupt intervention or not having corrupt intervention, right? When you don't have corrupt intervention and you have a bad chase and you lose 2 gens first chase, you're going to also, with Ruin, you have a bad first chase, you're going to lose 2 gens first chase. Because if you're not pushing survivors off of the generators, right, in the same way where survivors, through the generators not being blocked by corrupt intervention, are able to sit on those generators during your first chase for an extended period of time, there go 2 gens. So you bring a whole Hex perk that survivors don't have to go out of their way in order to cleanse, in order to stop you from, preventing them from repairing the generators. And it's like they have their cake and eat it too. So just keep that in mind that if you are going to run Ruin, that you have to be on point. Especially since, again, we talk about not having corrupt intervention as just a comparison looking specifically at Ruin itself. What do y'all notice about this build? The build itself doesn't have corrupt intervention. So quite literally in that example, you will be experiencing that like quite literally on the parallel for every one of your matches if you do decide to run this build, right? Unless you maybe swap it out for corrupt intervention, swap out Pentimento, but I digress. And next, we've got Thrill of the Hunt. I did the math on this perk. Not really a big fan of Thrill of the Hunt on Clown. Other killers, again, with more mobility, I think this perk would be a whole lot better, right? Like you look at Ruin. When with survivors need an extra 8 seconds, that is how much this adds up to, 12% per stack on a 14-second base cleanse. This can be really good for defending your Ruin, defending, say, if you had Blood Favor, right? Your other Hexes. But the problem with Clown is 8 seconds isn't really that much in the grand scheme of things. It probably, I'll say this, if you beeline to your totem right on match spawn and a survivor also spawned on your totem and is cleansing it, maybe the slowdown will prevent you from always losing your totem, even if you did everything you could to stop yourself from losing it by going straight toward the totem, right, at the start of your matches. But that's not really worth a perk slot. I think that's more just an argument for just not running Hex builds, right? Because if that's all it would really technically do, what happens in the situations where you don't predict the survivor is on that totem, right? And it does get cleansed even with that extra 8 seconds. You're giving up basically 1 perk slot, essentially 2 actually, when you consider that this isn't doing what you want it to do, right? And it just, at best becomes a perk where you hope the survivors cleanse it before the others, right? If it's not really doing you anything to protect you from losing the totems, it just becomes a matter of, thankfully they cleanse Thrill, they didn't cleanse Ruin, they didn't cleanse Blood Favor, you know, or they didn't cleanse whatever hex we have in Pace of Pentimento, or even the Pentimento itself with that 30% slowdown it currently provides. So there's just a whole lot of reasons where, again, on a killer like Clown, a killer without mobility, this perk falls behind. Next, we've got Blood Favor. Blood Favor, I love this on Clown. This is actually probably like one of Clown's best hex perks, if not the best hex perk on Clown. There's some argument for Haunted Grounds, but personally, I feel like Haunted Grounds requires some perk synergy. You kind of need to run that with Retribution to get the most out of it. That, or possibly have Cigar Box, maybe be on an indoor map. I don't know. The variables become way too specific to where it's almost like, again, doesn't stand on its own, right? But you know what does stand on its own? Blood Favor. There have been many times in my making Clown builds where I just say, you know what? I've got an extra perk slot. I don't know what I want to put in my build. I don't have any other hex perks, but I'll put in Blood Favor. Blood Favor, I like to think of it, especially on Clown, as the aggressive Corrupt Intervention. Because while Corrupt Intervention stalls out your generators from getting done early so that you can afford to have a longer chase, Blood Favor does the opposite. Survivors are free to work on the generators at the start, right? Just as if you didn't have Corrupt, but your chases become so much faster if survivors don't have a strong window to work with, right? If they're not on a map with, like, I know Haddonfield's made a lot weaker for survivors now, but you know how that the windows and everything, like on the main building, you'll get even a map like Borgo, right? Borgo has some pretty strong windows. This isn't really as valuable there. But pretty much literally everywhere else besides those strong window map specific tiles, right? Like, you are going to get so much value out of this in your very first chase, especially if survivors greed, because they're not going to know you have it on the very first health state. And that can sometimes turn you into a 20-second first hook. Right? Not 20-second start of the match, but you start your chase, you get an injury, and then the survivor has literally nothing to work with, so the second health state comes incredibly quick. And that's what's great about it. And, you know, I'll even go as far to say, y'all, is that when you look at Corrupt Intervention and how Corrupt Intervention is about stalling out the beginning of the match and it goes away after your first down, if you can get a super quick hook out of Blood Favor, just a single quick hook, I'd almost go as far as to say this is worth the perk slot alone, even if it gets cleansed right after that. That's how strong I think Blood Favor is, so Blood Favor being in here is really, really good. This basically pulls survivors off of generators. I'll go as far as to say that. When you take a perk like this and you put it in the hands of a killer like Clown who's all about micro, and you just amp his micro up that much farther, you know, pre-dropping pallets is the only thing survivors really have, because pre-dropping pallets, assuming it doesn't allow you to chain the tile, it extends the chase long enough for your survivors to get value out of the, you know, what's being wasted. But when your chases become that much shorter with Blood Favor, it becomes a matter of you can't just sit on generators as survivors. You have to get off generators and you have to go cleanse. So that is one of the value when it comes to running Blood Favor, is that it is so good for Clown, at least specifically, right? You compare it to the other two hexes, right? Ruin and Thrill of the Hunt. These really fall behind by comparison because they favor more mobility. This favors more micro. So I really like Blood Favor here. And lastly, we've got Pentimento. Pentimento, personally, y'all, like, it's good at the moment. After the nerf, not so much. That's kind of why I'm making this face, because it's going to go down to 15% regressions and healing penalties, I believe, on the first totem. It'll be nice to get some healing speed penalty on first totem, but at only 15%. That is half of what it currently is when it comes to repair speed. And having that on the first totem, that 30%, really helped a lot with a build like this, because a build like this, which has no instant regression, when it comes to your generator slowdown being purely that 30%, right? Your playstyle shifts into attrition. You're not looking to kick generators and take everything down. You're looking to have quick chases, you know, as I talked about, playing aggressively with the Blood Favor. And when you do start losing your totems, you continue the attrition playstyle with your Pentimentos lit so that the generators take just long enough for you to start getting your kills, right? That's kind of how this worked. And with that percentage being reduced to half at that one totem when you really kind of need it as early as you can get, especially since I'll go as far as to say that if you can get two totems lit, having the second one to defend the first in some situations, especially if survivors decide to greed while injured to sit on generators, you now take advantage of them, like you can snowball off of the healing taking longer with a double light. they have to heal, and then they have to double cleanse in order to also get rid of the generator speed penalty. So it was really, really, like, I would say really great. Yeah, it was really good in this build, even as it was, without any instant regression to complement it. But going down to that 15%, I would personally consider some alternatives. And I looked at a bunch of different options here, and I'm gonna be honest, gang, the best choice that stood out was probably gonna be crowd control. I know a lot of people are thinking, why not Devour Hope? Why not Haunted Grounds? Which I did mention, right? Haunted Grounds needs some support from Retribution. We don't have any slots there. Devour Hope, I feel like, is best in a build that doesn't use any other hexes. And this is because Devour Hope is something you don't want getting cleansed. What's the best way to get a hex cleansed? Encourage survivors to go looking. So putting this build into a build that is already front loaded with so much aggro in, the hexes, and like wanting to get survivors off of generators and spend time cleansing, right? Why would you run Devour Hope? You don't know where your Devour Hope's going to be. It could be the hex that the survivor cleanses when you're looking for your blood favor, right? Like, they're not looking for the Devour, they're looking for the blood favor. They cleanse the Devour, and then it's like, oh, well, I just wasted a perk slot, right? Yeah, maybe you extend the blood favor a bit, but you know what's crazy? You could have been extended the blood favor a bit, taking a better hex perk, right? So it's like, Devour Hope, not really fitting in the build. Nothing but misery. I've done a couple videos on this. This perk sucks. I really just think they need to buff it to 10% hindered if it's going to remain 8 injuries or 8 basic attack hits in order for it to activate. That, or they need to reduce it to 4 for it to be 5%. That'd probably be worth using, possibly. This hex does, in a way, stand on its own, especially with Clown, now that haste and hindered are allowed to stack again. But yeah, this otherwise, don't pick that. Third seal, really don't think Clown has the macro to get the injuries enough for it to matter, especially if you wanted to somehow turn this into a slugging build. Third Seal's not going to really work with that on Clown, at least in my opinion. Maybe on a different killer. Plaything, you don't have enough totem slots for that. You've already got 3 totems used of 5, so at most only 2 survivors are going to get playthinged. I don't really think that's worth a perk slot. And yeah, you don't really have, like I said, a whole lot to work with, So I really do think when it comes to hexes, your best choice is crowd control. And especially with blood favor, the synergy between crowd control and blood favor is incredible. Because normally, remember how I said survivors have those window tiles to work with? Now, again, some of those same window tiles, because they're played like a circuit, survivors aren't going to be wanting to vault the same window twice, so it's not going to really give you the value there, right? But at the same time, when you consider the other window tiles, your LT, some of your jungle gyms, 4 lanes, right? There are plenty of situations with windows that are filler tiles across many of your matches, where this is actually really, really awesome. And I've gotten some hits where it was because I brought this in addition to this that I wouldn't, I was able to get it, since otherwise survivors could just continually play the window, right? Because even though Clown has his bottles, Clown has his yellows and your pinks, he's got a limited number of them. He's going to run out eventually. Really good survivors are going to play off of the momentum they gain from wasting your time in these situations. So being able to maintain your momentum even when you fall behind on bottle economy by blocking windows as you push, right? Push and continue your chase. That gets you those downs a lot faster, because in DBD, chase times are exponential. If a survivor is able to make use out of a window or a pallet to the point where they make it to another window or a pallet, that's not 5 seconds of time wasted, it's 15. You know what I mean? So crowd control, really great there, but it's important, again, keep in mind, you look at all of these hexes, especially when you throw crowd control into the mix, I'm telling you right now, you are pulling these survivors off gens. You're probably, if you have, there's 2 outcomes with this build, and let's kind of now shift to talking about playstyle. I think now's a good time for that. Well, first, actually, let's go ahead and talk about the add-ons before we get to playstyle. First, looking at the add-ons, we have Kerosene Can and Flask of Bleach. This was also voted for. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan of Kerosene Can on Clown at all. It only really counters windows of opportunity and chase, and that's about it. It's only inflicts blindness for 30 seconds on your pink bottles. 30 seconds. Now, maybe if it was like 60 seconds, 75 seconds, or even 90 seconds, I feel like the utility from this would be worth considering. It's just that right now, you don't know if a survivor has windows of opportunity. It is not at the rate of meta where I think it is worth running, right? Even something like Dead Hard, unironically, y'all, is almost to the point when it comes to, like, it's far enough behind in meta where I think even if this, like, if Dead Hard was less impactful, I should say, rather, obviously. What I'm trying to get at is that windows of opportunity is not like Dead Hard, obviously, and it's not as common as Dead Hard. So if it's not as impactful, not as common, why would you run Kerosene Can? It's one of those things where I feel like maybe on the lower mid MMR, it would be better. Maybe if the duration was longer, you could adopt into a different playstyle like slugging, but this is what was voted for. I'm just saying, gang, right? Like, I'm kind of talking about why I don't like it because there's a reason why you don't see me normally run it. And yeah, Flask of Bleach, however, is a fantastic add-on, and I would go as far as to say the best when it comes to playing singular tiles. That 4% hindered goes a very long way. It is effectively the equivalent of almost a third of what his pink bottles currently are at base. 15% with 4%, you get that 19% hindered effect. This used to, fun fact, be 5%, so it used to literally be a third. You would go from 15% to 20%, and it was some really great times, but this got a little tiny nerf, and I don't really feel like the nerf hurt it all that much. You know, I remember when it was announced, a lot of people were freaking out about it going from 5% to 4%, but in the grand scheme of things, Clown, I feel like it didn't alter anything in the slightest, especially with how people were using Flask of Bleach to begin with. A lot of people were going Flask of Bleach with either 15%. And in these situations, right, having that extra 1 second intoxication, that 1% hindered isn't having any impact. So I really don't think this nerf really did anything. This add-on is and always has been really great on Clown. I think it's better when it's paired with something like Garsh Makeup Kit. I do think either 15% is a great pairing with Flask of Bleach, you know, but it's just that you're going to get more out of chaining tiles and playing singular tiles with Garsh Makeup Kit than you will with either 15%. But, you know, all of that is kind of to the side, right? Because we don't have either of these. We do have Kerosene Can. It's just what I would recommend to you. I definitely would not recommend Kerosene Can alongside Flask of Bleach, but do what you please. And we're going to move on next, talk about playstyle, because while it is one thing to, you know, talk about the build itself, it's important to know how to utilize it. And when you have a build like this, especially since the build doesn't have Corrupt Intervention and it's going to have some aggressive front-loaded hex perks, you're going to want to just play into the fact that you will be losing these hexes. Survivors are going to find them, especially if you are on a map which has predetermined hex spawn locations, right? Some totems are guaranteed, like on Midwich, Dead Dog Saloon, where every single time you play on that map, a totem will spawn in a specific location. And since you have 4 hexes, this is likely going to happen and you're going to lose one. So it's just a matter of which. And when it comes to that, you've got a 25% chance of losing any one of these. You're not going to know which of the hex it's going to be. There's no way that you can defend your blood favor and sacrifice your Thrill of the Hunt, right? There's no, I hate to use this language, there's no chess at play when it comes to long-term decision-making of which hexes to sacrifice, which to defend. And that is why I even, in some situations, because Clown doesn't have map mobility, I would just say, what can I get before I lose what I have? You know, can I get 1 or 2 hooks before I lose blood favor? I mean, that's great, right? Because it's not like I can stop the blood favor from getting cleansed, because defending what I think is the blood favor may be me defending the Thrill of the Hunt and thus losing the blood favor. You know, so just like you would play a match without any gen perks and you want to hope that you can get as many chases in as you can, as many hooks, as many downs, and win the match in that manner, that is the same way that you would play with a hex build on Clown, in my opinion. Maybe if you were playing this on someone like Onryo or Freddy or just any killer with more hypermobility, you could afford to kind of plot and path in between your totems, especially with Thrill of the Hunt, to prevent them from getting cleansed, especially early. But, you know, again, without that mobility, without that macro pressure, I really just think you're going to be better off as Clown just looking for chases, you know? Survivors are going to be giving you ruin value since they're not going to be on gens. If they're sitting on gens when you're playing well, they're losing the game. That is the one nice thing about this build. If you kind of pretend like your hexes are just side objectives that you can't play into, and so when they go, and if survivors also similarly say, Clown doesn't have gen perks, maybe we can just sit on gens, you're going to have 20-second chases consistently, because this doesn't go away now. For those that don't know about crowd control blocks windows permanently. So you're going to be blocking windows permanently. Survivor's going to come up on that after you just block the pallets with blood favor. They're not going to be able to vault that window when they chain the tile. They're going to die at the wall. They're going to get hooked when you probably already have someone on hook. And now you need to pull the survivors now off the generators, so the ruin kicks in. They're not getting anything there. And by the time they start looking for hexes, this could end up being the difference in whether or not you down a survivor before they cleanse the crowd control, before they cleanse the blood favor, right? By virtue of survivors overgreeding, giving you a lot of pressure, pressure, right? You can possibly snowball in that case because of it if you're playing well. But what happens if you fall behind, right? We talk about how you should be playing and what things will look like when you're going well and the pressure it puts on survivors. But if you have a bad first chase, 2 gens first chase. Ruin does nothing. Survivors aren't being pushed off their generators, so it's effectively as if this isn't regressing anything. You lose this as well, right? 8 seconds makes no difference if you're having a bad first chase, if you're not able to really convert anything on the survivor you're going after, because by the time you break chase, by the time you look to find someone else, doesn't matter. Your poor mobility means this doesn't do anything, totems get cleansed. Similarly, blood favor and crowd control, if these end up getting cleansed early before you're able to get it down, like let's say you're struggling with immersion, how can you have difficulty getting value out of these perks early into a match? You can't find a survivor. Maybe they're pre-running, right? Crowd control and blood favor don't counter pre-running. What's the easiest way to beat Clown? I always talk about pre-run at the terror radius. You shut down so many different avenues Clown has, perks or not, in order to stop you. I feel like at the moment, effectively, the only thing that stops pre-running is building up stacks of play with your food. So that is how they could do that. That is how they can make a situation for you where you're not getting any hits here, you're not getting any value, and then you're losing your totems and you're losing your generators. So that is one way you fall behind here as well. And it's, again, one of the banes of running Hex builds is that they're just so gambly, you know, and there's just such a lack of agency for a killer like Clown to want to run it, since you're going to have great matches where it's like, yeah, you're unstoppable. You're getting the blood favor into crowd control downs where survivors, it feels like they can't do anything. But then you have matches where you can literally load in and it's like, because you didn't go to the right totem, it gets cleansed before you start your first chase and you get your first health state, and then it happened to be the blood favor, so you don't get that pallet blocking, and then they're able to make it to a strong pallet and they pre-drop it and they waste enough of your time. Maybe you've gone through enough of your economy to where you have to reload, so then maybe they chain the tile, right? And even though they vault the window with crowd control, the window is not something they need to chain. It's something they can vault the window and keep running, so crowd control doesn't do anything. And then by the time you're looking to finally get your down, maybe you finally get the first down and another survivor cleanses the crowd control. So you didn't get any value out of your blood favor early. You barely got anything at all, or not even, no, you didn't get any value, right? Because even though crowd control activated, it didn't do anything, and then it gets cleansed. So that is something to kind of take into account, is that even though these are good early, Clown does have the inherent downsides from pre-running, from ways of like starting a chase, and these only really start to kick in if you do well. So that's the bottom line with this build. You have to do well, you have to be aggressive, and play into attrition and the understanding that your Hex perks are going to go away. So what I've got for y'all are 2 matches. Normally I would leave, or I was planning on making this video with just 1 match highlight, but since Pentimento is getting nerfed and it's going to, you know, they're cutting it in half, I wanted to get you guys an alternative with the build, and I just didn't want to, I wouldn't feel comfortable going into this new patch literally tomorrow with a nerfed perk. So if you don't like the new Hex Pentimento, of which I don't, I would say I would recommend running crowd control. And if you're not even a Clown player, right, maybe you consider taking a different perk, right? Something like even, I would even go as far as to say maybe even like, honestly, if you are playing a killer with mobility, Devour probably would work. Clown just doesn't have that, especially when you encourage survivors to look for totems. But yeah, the first match will be with Pentimento, the second match will be with crowd control, and after each match we'll also be giving ourselves a little bit of commentary. Personally, I've argued that I felt like map offerings do have a place in the game. I know a lot of people don't, and a lot of people feel like they should block you going to a certain map. And like, I feel like, honestly, if we're going to make it to where the alternative is just say increase it by 20% to go to a map, I would rather what other people said, right? If that's how behavior did want to approach it, I would rather just say, hey, I don't ever have to worry about going to RPD. You get what I mean? She must be the one who brought the map offering, I guess. Balance landing, yeah, that's what I think. Do we have anything going on over here? Probably gonna lose a gen or 2 first chase, sadly. This is definitely... Well, I mean, if they give me shit like that, maybe not so much, I don't know. Remember, blood favor means no things to work with. Ain't no fucking way, dude. About to say, if I don't get a fucking down off this, you have actually got to be kidding me. Wow, I almost got scuffed by my pink bottles, by the way. Damn, that's fine, we get the down. We'll carry her around this way, because I think I still heard them upstairs, and I do want to get a rotate here. In fact, I want to confirm something. Yeah, they are up there. He's gonna drop early. Remember, if I get blood favor, he gets nothing off this. Oh shit. The totems are still up. Well, yeah, they're on gens, but the question is... Oh, I just realized we had Ruin. I'm gonna carry him a bit this way. I don't want them to stumble on the totems themselves, coincidentally, as they do look. So they must have powered through. Okay, I think I partially see what's going on here. They definitely have someone as we speak. On that gen up there. Why would I throw that bottle there anyways to begin with? This gen is regressing. Someone isn't up here. Okay. I mean, if I don't see anybody else, I'm tunneling. This is a good chase to begin with anyways. Remember, she has been hooked already. Probably should have been mindful of Dead Hard. That could have been really, really painful. We would not have had blood favor for the follow-up there. She would have had pallet. She could have chained pallet into main building. That could have been really bad if we had Dead Hard there. People talk about the impact of a single Dead Hard in a chase, or excuse me, people by people I mean me. That's what that a single Dead Hard could do. I can tell you right now without it even happening. This pallet into that pallet, all that. We don't have anything to help us in chase but our totems, right? So it's extremely important we get that value from our blood favor. There goes one of them, but it's partially fine. We do have Penti. What did they take care of? Everything but the blood favor, and he's... I probably should have... I could have gotten this down. That's on me. That's totally on me. It's fine. I, for whatever reason, double-guessed myself, thinking he was going to do something else. I should have just been more confident in my decision-making. You know, they might actually give me the fiver, and he greeds. Holding your bottles is very, very beneficial for that and kind of securing it. So what all do we have left? 2 totems here. 1, 2, 3. What are they doing? We need to... Okay, so they did power through the ruin. Couldn't really get up there if I wanted to. Hey, she's healthy over there. Blood favor and ruin is still up. Someone else is still here. I swear I just saw someone right now. I'm gonna go ahead and light one of these. No need to light another one at the moment because I'm not gonna get any value from healing slowdown. I might, this actually, if there was ever a time, yeah, you guys are fucking. Can I play off of this? We did get rid of Killer Shack. I might be able to consider lighting a second here. Garsh makeup kit, FYI. That's Garsh makeup kit. If we had cheap gin bottle, we run out of steam, she makes it to window. That's ruin, we still have blood favor. RNG is actually very on point for us this match when it comes to which of our totems get cleansed. The true win condition at the moment is actually finding Chris. He is on Deathloop. I'm kind of just stalling for time at the moment. In fact, I'm going to consider relighting another Hex here. This is to get that healing slowdown. Maybe I actually catch him now.
He gets the heal off, that's fine. It does at least slow down gens a tad bit. Take efficient pathing, maybe. We know they have to coordinate the unhook in a certain way, or with certain people in mind. This is store resting, that's good. Gen is still done. 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna go deeper. I have a feeling they're just letting her sit to fucking hog the gens. Let's see. Oh, he's just literally who I want. He's on death though. Yeah, we actually want this chase so much. And remember, we still have blood favor. And now that we have two... Where's the fuck are my hooks? He's just not even struggling, which is actually kind of good. Where would my hooks have been? Did I even have a hook? What, did they get rid of all my hooks or something? I could have technically yelled theoretically, but thanks at least for that. She just got on a Jenna thing as well, so she doesn't have any tunnel. We do still have 2 stacks of Penti, so getting this is very tactful right here, being able to get the double injury right now while we still have the double Penti. If they do want to go get the reset, it's not going to do much. At this point, I might play a bit more into that 1v3 and kind of just spread myself out a bit. We already got rid of Killer Shack, so I'm expecting her to want to rotate here. Now she's going to get yellow. Check, she actually doesn't. Wow. She's got nothing to work with. Notice I shut down both checks. She's going to be able to fucking work with this, actually. I shut down both sides of the Killer Shack. You can tell by that pink over there. There would have been no way for her to play Killer Shack from either side of it. Even if, especially, there was pallet. So she's dead. Good stuff, good stuff. Good turnaround, too. Walking, I feel like. Yeah, she's walking all right. Oh, if they didn't get one of the Penties, would we have 5? No, they never did get a Penti, I think. They'd have to get a Dual Totem, I think. Because we have 4. Wait, hold on a second. Okay, that's regressing. Good turnaround. And they brought the offering too, so it's pretty cool too. And we got that as well. Thank you, Unknown. Hope you're doing well. So what was up with that? Did they sabo? We did have a hook over here we could carry to. It felt like the hook spawns were a little bit abnormal this time around, though. Or did I just not see it? Oh. I'll hook them both. GG's, they played really well. I'm not gonna wait out the Mori, that's kind of corny. Yeah, there's a lot of ambience in the game that, like, you know, sometimes it's like surprises you when you hear it. Yeah, actually, Was she the one with the map offering? Wow. So I was wrong. Y'all, I thought Nia brought it. Because she had balance landing and everything and how she chained the main. But even though she didn't have Dead Hard, right? Because I also thought that too, just based on what we had kind of seen in front of us, yeah. So what I think was really great about this match is that it really puts on display a lot of what I had talked about with regard to how you would play this build as Clown, how survivors are going to react to it, the downsides of you falling behind and getting a good chase, right? Because admittedly, I struggled a bit. I didn't get my first hook till probably, I believe it was over a minute, well over a minute into the match. Two survivors could have been on a generator and completed that in that time. Ruin was completely ignored, I think, by one survivor individually, right? They just sat on that generator the whole time without me getting any progress since I never pathed to them and I didn't have any type of mobility to consider breaking any of my chases earlier, right? There was no real impetus or consideration for me spreading pressure, getting injuries and just across multiple survivors. And thus, as a result of that, because I wasn't getting my first down on other survivors earlier into that match, that survivor ignored Ruin, finished a generator. But even though I had a bit of a rough start, I was able to recoup that lost macro pressure. I started getting some downs, and because of blood favor, because of survivors being caught out of position, because of me with my experience in Clown and how to play him in chase, right? Especially Flask of Bleach, definitely give credit there. We were able to catch these survivors in ways where we got the most out of blood favor and got some fast chases. And survivors, they didn't realize until too late that, hey, maybe we need to start cleansing totems. And this is what I was talking about where it backfired on them. Sure, they were able to get a little early gen progress, but when Clown is starting to get hooks and you wait until he's already got those hooks before you decide to look for totems, well, now you're really crossing your fingers that you get some good RNG. Because if you don't get that blood favor, right? If you're spending time not consistently on generators, you're giving them value out of that Ruin. And if the whole purpose of you doing this is not to get the Ruin, but to get the blood favor, and you don't get the blood favor, that time is wasted in 2 layers. And at the same time, Clown is building himself up to a point where even if you do get it, now it doesn't mean anything, right? Because what does it matter if you cleanse blood favor, such in the example of this match, when 2 survivors are already dead? It's too late at that point, and that's literally what happens when by the time you start looking for the blood favor, you first accidentally cleanse the thrill of the hunt, and then you accidentally cleanse the Ruin, and or you come across one of the penties, right? You come across literally every other totem but the blood favor. You wait too late. Even though Clown falls behind, even though you ignore the Ruin, right? That's the greed. You ignore the Ruin and also similarly ignore the blood favor, thinking that because I guess Clown has a rough early start, he's not going to recoup, he's not going to play better. And sometimes that does happen. Greed does pay off. But with this build, if greed starts to not pay off, it becomes too late, right? It's almost like you're taking on debt that you're not going to be able to pay back. By the time blood favor's gone, 2 kills, match over, you know? Now, having crowd control would have definitely helped out a lot. It's just by virtue of the fact that this map, I think, is a little bit more palette-centric, and survivors tend to want to play the palettes more, I think, than the windows on this map. But that was where we really kind of capitalized the most. I do think, though, when I mentioned the Nia, I want to really talk about this one specific chase. After I had hooked Nia once and I changed targets when I was going for, I think it was the Chris Redfield, if I ate a dead hard there when I swung into her, I still had blood favor on a couple seconds of cooldown. I don't think blood favor even activates on deep wound, so it would have not even activated anyways, even if it was off the cooldown. We still had 2 pallets she could have ran to and thus extended the chase. I could have lost my hexes if they had decided to work on them in the process because I can't commit to her since she can chain 2 really strong pallets. And if I end up just breaking the chase with nothing, that's a huge swing of negative tempo, especially if Chris heals, especially since I can't find Nia if Nia heals, especially if they either somehow popped a gen or if they get a totem, right? Walking away with nothing. So Dead Hard literally would have changed the game had she had it because I played so impatiently. I just wanted to get the down as quick as I could. She wasn't a dead zone. She wasn't really in a situation where it's important that I swing early, right? If that makes any sense. So just something to think about. Pentimento helped out a good bit. Let's talk about Penti. What did Penti really do for us?
when they gave us that hook where we could camp it by proxy, this really pulled them off generators, since it's not really efficient at the current moment, I would say, with the 30% speed penalty to sit on generators when your team, someone needs to get unhooked and the killer's camping, specifically Clown. Clown is pretty good at tunneling off hook. That is why you would want more than one person unhooking. You typically want a second person, so that would be a total of 3 survivors not on generators when you consider the person on the hook, person 1, person 2. And if they don't really, you know, like since we did bring the Pentimento and we did encourage that to happen, this was where Penti probably did the most for us. Survivors couldn't just pretend we don't exist. That's what a lot of survivors do nowadays with the 70-second hook timers, is they just sit on generators. They have their cake and eat it too, because they can still unhook their teammate before they hit the next hook stage. And it's just, you know, something that Penti really prevented for us. But the next match I've got for you guys, we are going to be using Crowd Control instead of Pentimento. I think Crowd Control with Blood Favor, as I was mentioning earlier, is really, really great. And yeah, you know, just like this match too, I think there's a whole lot of great things that can be said. They were a little bit better earlier in Spooky, but it is what it is. Grandma's cookbook. Oh shit, wait, did someone actually bring a swamp offering? Isn't that interesting? What kind of pathing is this? You have to hurry up and pick up now. No one's nearby, thankfully. Smart to emote, though, to make sure that she'd go under it. That was good pathing on her part, by the way. I know when I said what kind of pathing, I was actually surprised. I thought she'd go boat. That's why I pinged in front. Good on her part, though. Hold on. Oh, she actually was on it. Okay, dude. I didn't hear an audio cue, so I thought she wasn't. Which one was that? Thrill of the Hunt? I guess it's fine. I probably could have stopped her had I known, but I genuinely thought she wasn't on it. Do you think this Nia is who brought it because of her cosmetics, maybe? It's a weird hunch. Did you have to come hype you up? Yeah, I did kind of need that, huh, babe? Yeah. Where are they? It's genuinely hard sometimes to tell whether they're like going left or right. Okay. Rotate around. Oh, this is actually so foolish of me. She's not gonna get it, at least. I was about to say, I almost played that really terribly, but then again, maybe we played that so uniquely that they just weren't ready for it. Now, we do still have my offensive perks, by the way, both Crowd Control and Blood Favor for Shaq, and I expect her to want to play this. And I also expect her... She's still here? About to say, she definitely left after that. I guarantee you she left after that, because she knew that the window would be blocked. He's gonna look to play this pallet. She actually gave me possession here. She gets hit now. Pink's gonna expire, yellow, well, I mean. That should have hit, I completely fucking disagree. Okay, we'll have to play this pre-drop then. Right? Perfect. I will kick the pallet now, though. This pallet absolutely needs to fucking go. Mainly because the way these other tiles are, right? While I am willing to play the pallet pre-drop, I'm not willing to play the pallet pre-drop against survivors where I don't have any type of, like, incentive to want to chase them, any advantage, right? If I'm trying to recoup incentive, and that pallet's there, makes that a lot harder, you know?
I was in a situation when chasing the other individual, right? Whatever the new survivor is. I had incentive there because they were already injured. I'd already hooked them. You know? You've got to be fucking kidding me. Dude, my pink really didn't fucking do anything there. Perfect. We're still at 5 gens. Do you think they're looking for the hexes? Am I blind? Dude, someone is abso-fucking-lutely here. Oh, Deli. Interesting. Someone is here, but I can't waste my fucking time, and I'm not gonna chase someone with Deli who's very likely gonna have DS. Direct hit, the bonkers. You're fucked now because of my yellow. Oh my gosh, how? They've got a perk that makes them run faster. They've got a perk that makes them run faster together. They're doing the thing. They're doing the fucking thing, dude. Holy shit. They've got blood pack. I guarantee you, there's no fucking way they don't otherwise. Oh my gosh. You don't see that every day. Holy shit. They're doing the thing. I fucking love this, dude. Is she still sped up? Oh, no blood favor somehow. I don't think she has a flashlight. Blood pack. Yeah, that had to have been it. She was faster than me, it felt like. Oh, she healed. Oh, no, she was already healthy. About to say, you better pick another place to go. Oh, you gotta love crowd control, huh? And there goes blood favor, but it's okay. I'm gonna go for Nia here. Remember, we do still have crowd control. No way, that's the perfect pink placement. Oh my gosh, y'all, imagine if that pink denied. They got all my hexes, actually, what the fuck? We're gonna commit to Claude now because I don't know where the hell the other person went. He's gonna give me pallet possession. Oh my. You know what? It's at 5 gens, I'm gonna commit to this shit. She actually got my yellow. Think she vaults with it? No, she doesn't. I don't get my own yellow. She actually does vault into it. Damn, y'all, she had my own yellow too. By the way, what do you do in her situation? You just play the safe side of the tile. Clown only has an advantage against you with your yellows if you give him an animation lock by vaulting a pallet, right? So rather than play the safe, especially if it looks like he's expecting you to play the safe, when you can just rotate, he can't intoxicate you when you're invigorated. That's one thing probably a lot of survivors don't know. If you're invigorated by a clown yellow, you cannot be affected by a clown pink. You get immunity to it for the duration of the yellow. Look at this yellow placement, rotate. Oh, you are so cooked. You got read like a fucking book. She got the yellow, by the way. So we're gonna go for a bit of a long rotation. That was a very long rotation. Aw, she's so cute. She's so cute. Look, sorry, Nia. We gotta get the game over with, you know what I mean? GG's though, GG's. I think they spent so much time trying to find all the hexes that they didn't get any gens done. Because we did have Ruin and everything else going on, you know? And if they're looking for hexes while Claude is running with the, what is it, Baymar? I just remembered what the name of the new survivor is. Then yeah, I mean, that's a lot less, nobody on gens, you know? But crowd control, what I really like about this variation, right? Like, even though there's no Penty anymore, and Penty was previously what I ran in the build, I probably could have crossed this up a bit better. We're gonna try this, hold on. Crowd control gives them so much more impetus to look for them totems, because if you have crowd control and blood favor on Clown, we're gonna be really spicy with it, watch this. Look at that pink placement. You don't even see where it was going until it's too late. Oh man, we just keep it slick! I'm a hooker rather than a warrior. For this hooker since we're already carrying her. GG's. Yo, we got the abandon challenge because they didn't do a gen for 10 minutes. And I don't think we actually kicked one to regress, right? Or no? That's funny though. Did they stay or did they go? Should I stay or should I go now? What'd I fucking tell you, dude? I could smell that shit. I'm a clown player. I know when survivors should have certain amount of distance, and when I saw how they were playing, how they were like basically buddy and buddy, I was like, okay, dude. That's funny though. GG's. So by complete and sheer coincidence, on one of the few times that I'm ever running a Hex build, I happen to get sent to Backwater Swamp. Now, I know I didn't talk about maps that were good for Hex builds, I mostly talked about the bad ones. Backwater Swamp is probably one of the few maps where running Hex perks are actually beneficial. It's so hard for survivors to find the Hexes on this map because they are kind of ducked and tucked in random locations. There might be one or two at the main building of each map, right? So like the pantry on Grim Pantry, the big boat on Pale Rose. I think there even is one around the smaller boat on Pale Rose as well. But at the end of the day, this is not a good map when it comes to survivors countering a Hex build. If they don't have a map to tell them where to go, and this was a team who didn't bring Backwater Swamp with that intention, right? They were here from the looks of it. They had their own plan that I'll get to in a minute. So that meant that since they couldn't counter our Hexes, we were just able to fully play into what our perks provided us. And specifically what that means, right, compared to our last build, which had Pentimento, Pentimento is more of a reactive perk when it comes to how it helps out our Hexes. When we have crowd control, that's aggressive. That's just like blood favor. That, if anything, layers up even more incentive for survivors to where they need to go and cleanse these Hexes, because if they don't cleanse these Hexes, if we do actually start getting some early pressure, which compared to the last match we did, especially on account partially because of crowd control, right, with the blood favor, this means that they reach a point where they just can't come back. And especially since, right, they didn't pop a generator before they started looking for those totems, this meant that we started getting ruin regression, even though they finally cleansed their totem after we had already gotten a few hooks in. Well, guess which totem they cleansed? They cleansed the ruin, but we're still at 5 gens, right? Since I got such early pressure that they weren't able to get any generators done before through the ruin before they cleansed it, this means that cleansing the ruin now doesn't really help you, because even though
you got rid of Ruin and it's easier to get lasting pressure on generators, well, guess what? I've already racked up some hook states. And even though I may start to lose some generators, you're probably going to lose teammates before I lose generators, especially on account of the fact that I still have both Blood Favor and Crowd Control. And worst case scenario, right, even if on your very next totem cleanse you get one of these two, I still have one. And in the worst case scenario for you, if you get Thrill of the Hunt next, then I have the chance to get maybe, let's say, even 2 more hooks on account of that because I am just bouncing between my chases. Well, now you have only, you have to get through 2 more of these totems which are helping out my chase. And I will still have one which regardless of the other you get rid of. And I may get a kill or even 2 before you get rid of every single totem that I have on the map, right? At least the one that matters. Because it's extremely unlikely that survivors are going to leave you in your very worst outcome when it comes to this build, which is losing Ruin, Blood Favor, and Crowd Control before you lose Thrill of the Hunt. Now, if that happens, that's pretty bad, right? You basically lose 4 totems with only 3 cleanses because what it really is Thrill of the Hunt doing for you. But outside of that, since I don't think I really ever had that happen, it just shows not only how just infrequent it would be, it's not something where even when you're running a gambly build like a Hex build that you would count on that like you would count on your totem cleanses. And this is especially so when you're playing on Backwater Swamp, given how difficult it is for survivors to find your totems. Because yeah, even if they go through the Ruin and the Thrill of the Hunt accidentally because they're trying to hunt your Blood Favor and your Crowd Control, well, now they have to find the other totem spawns, and without any information for that, good luck when you've got a clown who is playing efficient with their chases, right? Who is finding survivors that he can chase so he's not wasting his time just meandering around the map, because you are on borrowed time that is very quickly running out. And that is how we were basically still at 5 gens. These survivors weren't just sitting there, you know, with their thumbs up their asses, gang. These survivors weren't doing anything and hiding on the map. I guarantee you they were looking for my totems because they were desperate to find my totems. They were so damn desperate, nobody was on a gen. And they were also probably doing their damnedest to making sure I didn't see them, because with the lethality from my hexes, if I did see them, they were afraid they were going to just die instantly, right? So they just had nothing going in the way of generators just because of just this high demand that they had to find my totems. And it just worked out so great for us for that reason. I mean, especially Crowd Control. There were some times where I caught the Aestri literally, like, as she vaulted a window, she was wanting to vault back. She couldn't. She didn't realize Crowd Control. She was in my pink, so she wasted her speed boost and just gave me a free down when she was already on Death Hook, right? And it's just little things like that, just the way you were able to layer up windows with Blood Favor, because usually that is kind of Blood Favor's problem. You know, I think I talked about it earlier. Blood Favor really falls behind as a Hex perk, even though it is really great individually for helping Clown and Chase. It doesn't require any other Hex perk support. It does struggle, though, if you do end up at a tile where survivors can play strong windows, because then what is Blood Favor doing for you? Especially with its fairly low duration. If survivors are skilled enough, they can, and depending on the tile, right? Maybe they play it long enough to where they outlast it and then they pre-drop the pallet, right? Depending on whether you've gone through most of your bottle economy, this can force a reload into a tile chain. So, you know, there are really, really good ways that survivors can play into this, which can hurt you. And if anything, that is probably what I would say is one of the best parts about putting Crowd Control into your build. Even though Pentimento provides that reflexive protection pre-nerf, having Crowd Control to go all in on your lethality is Clown and just going full attrition, right? Since it's not like you can defend your totems, it means that not only are you protecting the Blood Favor, but even if they were to remove the Blood Favor or remove the Crowd Control, you're still left with something that if they don't find, you can still convert a whole lot of macro pressure off of that, right? Because by getting faster chases, you're pulling survivors off of generators, you're going through those hook states that are going to eventually run out, and then you start getting kills, right? 1v3 situation is where Clown becomes a whole lot stronger in the macro game. And that was at least what we had going for us by virtue of taking this instead of Pentimento. Because, yeah, Pentimento would have slowed down the generators, but if we, you know, ended up instead losing Blood Favor and we don't have anything in Chase, all we have is Ruin and Thrill of the Hunt, and survivors have strong tiles to work with, and we don't have anything to help us in Chase besides Flask of Bleach, well, then they can basically ignore the Ruin, and I mean, what does it matter, right? They don't even have to worry about Ruin because we're not pushing them off a generator since we don't have any mobility. Now, one last thing I want to talk about in this match that was kind of interesting was what Aestri and Claudette seem to be going for. I think the reason they brought Backwater Swamp was because there were some specific tiles maybe that they have practiced that certain killers are just unable to get any hits in. The boat on Pale Rose might have been it, if not Grim Pantry. Grim Pantry, personally, I find to be worse for clowns since both the line of sight and just the way that you would like use your bottles in general. It's just so hard to actually play it efficiently. You need so much experience specifically at that tile that even I don't have. I used to have more as I kind of practiced Grim Pantry since it was part of a comp like loadout and rule set, but beyond that, it takes a lot of specific practice to know how to use yellow and pink bottles on the top side of the main building of Grim Pantry. And when you factor in that these survivors had 2 perks for haste, you definitely, even with all of that, it just doesn't matter. You could use your yellow and your pinks perfectly, but you're just not going to be able to catch them before they make it to either a window or one of the pallets, and your bottles are going to expire beforehand, even regardless. So it's just, oh man, especially since, again, we had Kerosene Can, you know, but that's all besides the point. Now, at the same time, we didn't find them at the main building. We found them at Killer Shack. They were still able to beat us back to the pallet, but since I did use yellow and pink bottles and I do a Flask of Bleach, we were able to just barely catch them before they were able to, you know, avoid one of my lunges, and I think this undid their perk. This made them lose all of their haste, and we just continued to snowball from there. You know, we forced them into a dead zone because of we still had blood favor and crowd control. They couldn't really play the boats when the windows on the boat get blocked and the pallet itself is blocked after they take that injury. And yeah, that was what was really funny and great for us. So it was, I think this was, again, because we got Backwater Swamp, things outplayed so perfectly. Had this been another map, right, even something like Dead Dog Saloon, which is hailed as a very killer-sided map, I think the totems would have gotten found very quickly there. But this was very, very fun, and it was very interesting, especially to see what the Aestri and the Claudette had planned. Now, to kind of wrap things up, to kind of summarize my thoughts on this build, I think Hex builds they are pretty fun, but I probably would not be running these consistently if you aren't willing to cope with playing without perks. I had a few matches running this build where I lost all of my perks within like the first 60 to 80 seconds. Survivors either spawned on them, they rotated into them because they just spawned conveniently next to generators in line of sight, right? Maybe they just saw it as they were rotating to those generators because they were in line of sight. And it really sucks playing hex builds, wanting to get value out of your hexes, and then your hexes are gone before they can do that. It's like you feel like you loaded into a perkless match with the expectations that you had perks. So don't run it in that case. I probably don't really run these for that reason. And going forward, we have, again, I'm going to be doing this every week to recap on how this series is going to work. If you want to see me run your clown build, leave a comment on this video that has 4 perks. No add-ons, just 4 perks. If your comment gets the most likes, I will choose your build. And similarly, reply to people's comments. I very much encourage that because with 2 add-ons in your reply, if your reply gets the most like, I will also choose your add-ons. That was how we chose Kerosene Can and Flask of Bleach. And similarly, it could be what I choose for you, especially if it is also your perk build that gets chosen. So, hope y'all really like this video. I have a really detailed clown guide. If you didn't know, that I'll be sure to link in the description. I usually update it every so often. It's been quite some time, but I do have some stuff in mind for that. I also stream live on Twitch during the weekdays. I'll have a link to my stream in the description as well. It's where I record these matches and other things of that nature. And lastly, if you really like this video, I'd really appreciate it if you'd like and subscribe, not just for yourself so you know when my new videos go live, but also to help me out with the YouTube algorithm. It boosts me in that way, and that makes it to where more of my videos seen by more people, and that's one of the things I like about this, is just kind of sharing my content so I can talk more about the game and help people out. So other than that, I hope y'all really enjoyed this video, and I'll see y'all next time. Later, gang.